And why would I come out and then do another attack?
He seems to be telling us via a verbal slip that he was involved in an attack previously.
He's an inadequate man and he's looking for a better kind of life for himself. He feels he can get it through committing terrorist acts.
Shush.
What's yours?
Adul.
London, July 2019.
Anti-terrorism officers have this evening arrested a man suspected of plotting a series of attacks across the capital. He's now being questioned at an undisclosed location. Witnesses say they saw an unmarked van stop an Uber driver.
He had discussed attacking Madame Tussauds and Piccadilly Circus because he really wanted to go after the heart of the tourism business. He also talked about running a vehicle into the Remembrance Day parade, and he also talked about launching an attack from an open-top bus, and that was his last point that he made to the undercover officers.
The suspect, Musa Chowdhury, aged 27, tells police they've got the wrong man.
All these little things, purchases, it's all can be explained in a very normal way. It's nothing to do with it.
When he's first arrested, Chowdhury's actually quite willing to talk. Ask me anything, he says, because he's confident. He thinks that his clever tactic is to question the police and say, look, why would I do this?
Because there's no attack planning at all.
Yeah.
Okay.
This first stage of the interview with Chowdhury is trying to establish whether he was part of the planning for an attack. Chowdhury is in a closed position. He's leaning on the table and he's folding his arms with his hands underneath his biceps. This is a common position we see. And people think that will stop them leaking information, but the fact that they're holding that position in the first place is an indicator that deception may be at play.
And we'll go through it, but I can explain it fully, like whatever you want to know.
He's very careful throughout to appear cooperative, and he's signalling that in his voice.
But really, there's no planning. It's just me doing my exercises, my training. That's really it. There's not, and following my interests. There's nothing about planning anything. Otherwise, you guys would have found it. Like if I'm actually planning something, right?
He's basically informing the police officers that there's no evidence, there's no proof, and that means he can argue there's no planning. So the best place the police officers can go now is to provide some evidence.
What Chowdhury didn't know was that he'd been under police surveillance ever since he'd been found not guilty of preparing another potential terrorist attack. Summer 2017. Britain on maximum alert. Attacks in London and Manchester kill 36 people and injure 1,000, many seriously. On August the 25th, it seems Buckingham Palace may be the next target. At 8:30 p.m, terrifying CCTV footage records a driver crashing into traffic cones on the Mall, opposite the palace gates, and directly in front of two police traffic officers.
They walked over to the car to try and find out what was going on. Once they got to the window, they could see that he was armed with a 3-foot-long samurai sword.
Revealing dashcam footage captures the moment, and for TV News, the officers vividly recall what happened next.
He's screaming Allah Akbar the whole time. By this point, I'm actually in the passenger side of the vehicle. So I'm struggling quite violently with him.
That struggle lasted for half a minute, with the driver swinging a 42-inch blade recalled in detail here by the police officers.
I wasn't going to relinquish the grip that I had, but obviously when we started struggling, the whole implement came towards me and embedded into the seat base.
There was an extremely sharp blade on it. I'm amazed that myself and Ian didn't get more injuries than what we ended up with, to be honest.
The man wielding the sword was Musa Chowdhury, then aged 25.
Musa Chowdhury grew up in Uxbridge in West London as a fairly normal kid, really. He was at university in central London studying psychology, and he dropped out of that course and then went to university in Luton to study there, and then dropped out of that course and then essentially became a warehouse worker for Amazon, and then progressed from there to delivery driver and eventually to being an Uber driver.
The investigation into the Palace incident found that when Chowdhury wasn't driving his Uber, he was online, devouring Islamist propaganda.
He had been looking at beheading videos, ISIS videos, and he had been making comments on WhatsApp. He talked about the attack on the Palace of Westminster.
Chowdhury had also joined a discussion group using the black flag of Islamic State in his profile picture, and in one post declared, "I support ISIS."
A lot of people, particularly young men, I have to say, are keyboard warriors, but for most it's all bluff, it's talk and no trousers. For Musa Chowdhury, however, he was one of the small number of people who become radicalised online and are prepared to take that out into the real world.
Hours before he drove to Buckingham Palace, Chowdhury was in a supermarket, buying a blade sharpener for the sword he kept in his bedroom. Around 5:15 p.m, he wrote to his sister, who he lived with.
By the time you read this note, I will be in paradise with Allah. The Queen and her soldiers will all be in the hellfire.
The trial of a man charged with preparing an act of terror outside Buckingham Palace is due to begin later today. 27-year-old Musa Chowdhury from Luton was armed with a samurai sword when arrested by police last August.
Chowdhury's defence, he hadn't intended to harm anyone apart from himself.
What he was trying to say to them was, I wasn't really trying to attack you at all, I just wanted to die in the process.
And it was his plan to show the police that he had a knife and they would shoot him dead. So it was a suicide plan, according to him.
While Chowdhury was in custody awaiting trial, he'd make sketches.
He was drawing pictures of attacks on 10 Downing Street, pictures of the 9/11 attacks, comparing the number of people that got killed in that to the number of people who were killed in the Iraq War. So he's getting more fixated, more obsessed, really.
It was all evidence for the Old Bailey trial. But Chowdhury's defence was that what happened at Buckingham Palace was a suicide mission, not a terrorist attack. And in December 2018, this was believed by the jury.
There was a unanimous not guilty verdict, and that shocked the entire courtroom, myself included.
The police and the prosecution were incredibly disappointed as well, because they knew that he'd been radicalised. They knew that he was actually a very, very dangerous person.
He walked away an innocent man. Within days, he resumed his online postings. On Instagram, he shared a video of himself with a recently purchased replica gun. For anti-terrorist officers, it was too much to ignore.
The police set out to launch an undercover operation. Chowdhury was working in a takeaway in Luton, and they sent officers into that takeaway to start chatting to him. And eventually they gained his trust.
Posing as customers, the undercover team drew him into conversations, face-to-face, online, and by telephone. A court would later be told that here, Chowdhury spoke about the events at Buckingham Palace.
Chowdhury starts to open up. He says that he did intend to go out and kill police officers, and explains that his motivation was to attack the Queen.
As the undercover operation went on, Chowdhury told the police more. He planned to attack Piccadilly Circus and crowded London tourist spots. He would target the Cenotaph as crowds gathered for Remembrance Sunday. and he asked for help in obtaining a gun.
He starts ringing out a rifle range down in Dorset where you can practice with ammunition and with live rounds, and you can learn how to shoot. And he says to the undercover officers, how do we get firearms?
Also on Chowdhury's target list, the annual Gay Pride March through central London. On July the 3rd, 2019, just 72 hours before it was due to take place, officers arrested him.
So anything you want to ask, I can answer it honestly, because there's no attack planning at all.
Back in custody, Chowdhury once again insisted he was innocent.
But I can explain it fully, like whatever you want to know.
Coming up, the watcher, the listener, and the profiler examine the terror suspect under pressure.
All these little things, purchases, this all can be explained in a very normal way.
He knows he's got things to hide.
So why would I then come out and then do another attack?
There's almost an embedded confession here.
And that is you speaking, and they refer to you as Musa.
At this point, Chowdhury knows that he's busted.
The annual Pride March through London. It's one of the capital's biggest festivals, attracting more than 1 million revellers. But in 2019, police had evidence it was the target for a terrorist attack, masterminded by British-born Islamist extremist Musa Chowdhury. 2 years earlier, he'd been arrested outside Buckingham Palace, armed with a sword. Now, under surveillance, detectives heard him speak of a new plan.
An attack would involve an open-top bus. And police, at the end of the day, couldn't take the risk that he wasn't going to attack Gay Pride, grab a knife and go out and do what he had done before, and they arrested him just a few days before that parade was due to take place.
During the undercover operation, Chowdhury had told officers about other terrorist targets. He'd posted online images of himself firing a handgun and armed himself with replica swords. When police raided his home, they found this knife hidden under a mattress.
All these little things, purchases, this all can be explained in a very normal way. It's nothing to do with an attack at all.
Chowdhury told the investigating officer he was happy to help with inquiries. But was he?
So anything you want to ask, I can answer it honestly.
I can answer is interesting because I can answer isn't the same as I will answer.
I can answer it honestly.
It's not the same as saying I will cooperate, I will answer everything you ask of me. He knows he's got things to hide.
My name was even cleared the first time during the first trial. I was found not guilty by 12 members of the jury. So why would I then come out and then do another attack? It doesn't make any sense. Yeah?
Another attack suggests he has done an attack. So in spite of being found not guilty by the jury, he seems to be telling us via a verbal slip that he was involved in an attack previously.
So you also obviously now been in prison before.
Along with the verbal clues that he was lying, the unconscious gestures.
So anything you want to ask, I can answer it honestly, because there's no attack planning at all.
When we make a gesture that reinforces speech when we're telling the truth, often, and most of the time, those will be synchronised. But his is not synchronised. He uses the word, no attack coming at all, and the baton, or the underliner, as we call it, the movements of the hand, follows slightly afterwards. So they're not synchronised.
Because there's no attack planning at all.
So this is a performance. Later on in the interview, we see the same lack of synchronisation.
I've already been in prison. I do not want to go back there. I know what I did was wrong, yeah, initially, yeah. So I don't want to do anything to do that.
So he says, I don't want anything to do with that. And the gesture would normally be on anything, but it follows half a second later.
So I don't want to do anything to do that.
This is a performance again. It's highly likely that this is a deceptive statement.
There's nothing about planning anything. Otherwise you guys would have found it, like if I'm actually planning something, right?
Police did find more evidence at Chowdhury's home. Slash marks on his canvas wardrobe showed he'd been practicing knife attacks. And then his plan for life after death.
So he's made a list of everything that he's going to do when he goes to Jannah, which is paradise, as a martyr. The first thing he's going to do is he's going to tour his palace that he will be awarded. And then he's going to meet all of his 72 wives and choose his main 2. So that's going to take a while. After that, he's going to feast with his family, and then he's going to have another feast with his friends. It's only when we get to number 7 on the list that he mentions that he wants to meet Allah, his God. So he portrays himself as this devoutly religious man. But in actual fact, we can see what's really motivating him here. He's an inadequate man, and he's looking for a better kind of life for himself. He doesn't feel that he can get it in this world, but he feels he can get it through committing terrorist acts.
But the most damning evidence came from Chowdhury's own lips. Unbeknown to him, his meetings with the undercover officers had been recorded. His admission that he'd lied at his earlier terrorism trial, his efforts to obtain a real gun, his plans for future attacks, all were on tape. Detectives played the recordings to him.
Just tell me, did you hear your voice? No.
At this point, Chowdhury knows that he's busted. The game is up, so he starts to shut down. He buttons his lip. He reverts to a no-comment interview.
Do you want to hear again, just to be sure?
No, I'm okay.
The volume being down and everything about him tells us that he's not all right. He knows he's been caught.
Because, police are suggesting that your voice is there.
But even after climbing up, Chowdhury's body continued to send signals.
No comment.
So if we take a close look at this little area here, where we've got some white trousers, only a tiny piece, it's a triangle here between the desk and his left elbow. We can see his legs. So although he appears calm on the surface, if we just wind this video backwards and forwards, we can see a vibration from the legs, which when you count that, there's about 5 movements per second. And it's the result of stress that's caused by anxiety. When you combine that with the rapid blink rate, we see him blinking just under his eyebrows here about 4 or 5 times in a short period of time, shows that he's also experiencing cognitive load. Cognitive load is another word for thinking hard. So he's having to work out, how do I respond to this? I've been trapped. They've got tapes.
Is there anybody else that could be? No comment.
So he's furious now. If you look at the face here, the brows are down, you've got a glare from the eyes, you can see the lips have started to clamp, and you can almost feel the ferocity of the anger that must be inside him here. And, okay, it's difficult to see, but this is reinforced by just look at his hand. What he's doing with his left hand now is clamping his fist so tightly you can see the knuckles coming through. So when you see this muscle tension in the form of a clenched fist that's so tight that it creates a whiteness on the backs of the knuckles, we're confident that he's angry.
And who else did you hear in the video?
Do you want to hear again, just to be sure?
No. This anger is probably directed at himself. He's been duped. He's been outwitted by the police.
No, okay.
In January 2020, Chowdhury once again went on trial for preparing an act of terror. But this time, the jury didn't believe his claims of innocence. After a month-long hearing, they found him guilty.
It became clear to us through that investigation, in his interactions with the covert officers and with others, that his intention was very firmly to murder as many people as he could and potentially to die in that endeavour.
He was imprisoned for life with a minimum of 25 years.
Happy, fulfilled people don't get radicalised. Chowdhury was living quite an aimless existence. There wasn't a lot going on in his life. He'd dropped out of university and he was working in a fried chicken shop. So he was on a quest. He was definitely on a quest, but it was a quest for some significance in his life, some sort of meaning. He'd found a group that he felt he could belong to, and he envisaged what in his mind was going to be a glorious future. Because let's face it, 72 virgin brides and a big palace is a far more exciting prospect, isn't it, than a future serving chicken.
Next time, we expose the only survivor of an explosion at his supermarket to be faking it. Brand new next Saturday night. Brand new this Saturday night, a crime special on the Lost Boys of Bucks County. Next on Quest Red.
Feeling bunny.